Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum to all of you. In our subject of literary criticism, when our classes were going on, we discussed about the definition of criticism, functions of criticism, and some types of criticism. Now, the second topic in our course is a book written by a Greek ancient writer Aristotle. The name of the book is the Poetics. The Poetics, we will discuss it further, but first of all, let's see who is Aristotle. Aristotle is a person who had expertise in various fields: metaphysics, aesthetics, literature, criticism, in most of the fields. And to some extent, not to some extent, but actually, when we talk about civilization, when we talk about the beginning of knowledge, it all started from Greek. So Aristotle, he was, it is weird when we talk about 384 to 322 BC. When we talk about this calendar as we are in which we are living right now, it is 2020. So the next one is 2020, 21, 22, 23. Here we are. He was born in 384 and he died in 322. So the calendar is moving backward. It was before Christ. So before this calendar was established, this time is before that. You can say if we are living in 2020, uh, so it is somewhere 384 years plus 2020. We are talking about somewhere 2400 years ago. 2400 years ago. This is one way to understand that when we talk about these dates before Christ, before uh, Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, Jesus Christ, he came in this world. He was an ancient Greek philosopher and he was a student of Plato. So Plato was again a great name that we will discuss in our in this lecture. Uh, when you talk about, I mean, one play written by Christopher Marlowe, Dr. Faustus. His character, Dr. Faustus, had expertise in various fields, PhDs, doctorates in various fields. For one person, it is very difficult to have a degree of doctorate in various, expertise in various subjects or fields. So Aristotle had. It was the time when you can say it was beginning of civilization, beginning of knowledge, beginning of literature and criticism. So let's talk about education and some works of Aristotle. As far as I already told you that we are talking about 2400 years ago. I mean when this calendar started, about 400 years back. Before that, so a little is known about Aristotle's personal life. Whatever is written, I mean, nothing can be said with certainty, but there are few things that need to be mentioned here. He was born in somewhere 384 BC, and in Greek, as I told you, near a seaport. And seaport means everyone from you know that we have Gwadar seaport, and there is a seaport near Karachi also. So a coastal area, I mean, you can say close to the oceans and a sea. So at that time, it was Plato, uh, this teacher of Aristotle, who had established an academy or school or whatever you want to say, because at that time there were quite a few learning centers, and Athens, one of the cities of Greek, it was one of them. So Plato established academy, and Aristotle joined that academy at a teenage. Somewhere it is written that he joined that academy at the age of 17. So Plato was the teacher and Aristotle was the student. Both these teacher and student, they had different ideas that we will discuss further. As I have written this name of the city Athens, it is one of Greek city. You can watch movie. The name of the movie is 300, and a movie Troy. Hollywood movies, historical movies. I mean, worth watching movies, I must say. There is mention of Sparta and Athens and other cities. If you want to know about it, about Greek mythology, goddesses and all that, you most of you must have watched it. You can watch it again from this specific perspective. S- uh, when he was in academy, after when he left that academy, he was hired by the king to teach his son. Son means the prince, the one who has to sworn in as king after his death. The name is Alexander the Great. All of us we know that Alexander, uh, he started from Greek and he had an aim to conquer the whole world. And he came to this subcontinent in. He came to uh, Pakistan also, near Texla. There are some remains when he passed from Texla, and his death was somewhere he died in this subcontinent. So he was. This is one of the greatest thing for a person, that he was teacher of Alexander. So he was a student of great Plato, and he was student of a teacher of great Alexander. So from both the things, from teacher and student, he had good fortune. So at the age of almost 46 and around 338 BC, he started teaching to Alexander. As far as his most famous works are concerned, his most famous works, there are many, but I have mentioned here few that are known. Poetics, that we will discuss, that is included in our syllabus of literary criticism. Metaphysics, politics, and prior analytic. There are aesthetics. There are other books also that I have not mentioned. There is a list of 8 to 10 books. He had written actually so much, but I have mentioned only few here. As we discuss about Aristotle, whenever you want to have any knowledge of Aristotle, or anyone wants to study Aristotle, it is useless to study Aristotle without making his comparison with his teacher Plato, because uh, what Plato said, Aristotle negated. What Aristotle says, that is quite contrary to the thoughts of his teacher Plato. Now, Plato, he believed in idealism. He was an idealist. But Aristotle was a realist. Plato believed that everything, idealism, let me tell you what idealism is. Idealism is like something is in your mind. The followers of idealist and idealism movement that started from Greek, they believe that everything is present in the mind, and whatever we observe all around, it is only reflection. For example, if I say that, or you say that there is a table or a chair, the idealist, the followers of idealism, they believe that even if there is all the chairs and the tables, they are wiped out from the map of the world, like there is no physically. For instance, physically there is no chair, no table, nothing like that is present. Still we have an image in our mind that like a shape of table and a shape of chair is there. But the realists, they believe that what table is, it is. What chair is, it is. Even if it is not in our mind, if it is in, it is a reflection of mind. Even then, it is physically present. For example, if table is made up of wood or iron, so wood and iron are present in here. Somewhere, somehow, there is a contradiction between these two ideologies, idealism and realism. Realists believe that what is you are looking with your eyes and you can touch it, that is reality. In reality, we see the sun, we see the moon, we see the stars, that is reality. But the idealists, they believe that if we are looking at the sun, if we just think about what sun is, even if there is no sun, then sun would be exist in our mind. A shape of sun or a reflection of sun is in our mind. And if we talk about moons and stars and everything about the world, they say that it is only a reflection of mind. So they go to, one uh, uh, what we call it, the staunch followers, the very strong or staunch followers of idealism. They believe that nothing actually exists in this world, it is only in our mind, it is only the reflections. So the this is actually the difference between these two. So you should keep in your mind one thing, that Plato was follower, or he was advocate of idealism, and Aristotle was follower or advocate of realism. So the Poetics is actually an answer to the objections raised by Plato. Plato had written a book, I mean other books also, but his most famous book was Republic. In Republic, he talks about government affairs, that how a government should work or how a state should be. In Republic, he talks about an ideal republic. What an ideal republic should be. Ideal republic means a utopian world. A utopian world means there is like a state or a city where is no one is criminal, no one is doing any harm to others, no one is no one is abusing others. There is only brotherhood, love, harmony, everything is there. Nobody is, there is no bloodshed, nothing wars, not everyone is living happily. So that is not possible. This is, you can say their idealism is like a state where there is no crime, a state where there is no corruption, a state where the people they are living with brotherhood, nobody is fighting with it. Because in history, when we talk about, or in reality when we talk about, every society, country, uh, community, it can never be crime free, it can never be corruption free, it can never be disease free. So these things, they can be minimized. When we talk about that somebody is here to talking about corruption, that it should be eradicated, rooted out, or eradicated, it doesn't mean that corruption would end from every side. Crime would exist, crime had existed, crime exists, and crime will exist. But an ideal ruler or an ideal head of state or an ideal administration, they can minimize its impact. For example, if we talk about that in a city there are about 100 murders in a year, when there is a weak administrator, and when there is a strong administrator, the murders can be 5 to 10. It can be minimized, but it can never be like that you have zero crime rate. It never happens. So when Plato talks about his republic, ideal republic. Republic means, again I repeat here, because most of the students, they might may not know about it, what republic is. Sometimes you say Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Actually we say it's Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Republic means democratic. In short, you can say in simple words that it is kind of democracy where there is no monarchy, like one family is not ruling, like king and after his son and after his son and after his son. It is not there. So one way the people they rule, from the people somebody comes and they start ruling. That is a kind of a governance system. So Plato, in his Republic, he talks about ideal republic, but Aristotle says that nothing like ideal republic can exist. How can a state or a country, it can never be like that. There is the point where actually the contradiction between the two theories or the two philosophies it starts. One, they are saying that a republic or a country should be it should be a utopian world where there is no crime. But the others, they say that it only can happen in dreams, not in reality. So Plato, idealism; Aristotle, realism. I hope that this would be clear. Plato criticizes poets. Now we come about to literature. That I was giving you just a reference, that how they have different ideas. Now I talk about, because we are studying literature and linguistics. So in literature, when we talk about, Plato criticizes poets. He says that poets, they do not have any place to live in ideal republic, because they are not philosophers. Plato actually is, he uses very harsh words for the poets, and he says that they all must be banished from an ideal republic. They have no place to live, because their philosophy, and they have no philosophy, and they have no use to the people. Their words are just their poetry is only a collection of words. It has nothing to do with the welfare of the state or others. So Again, I have already explained Plato believed in idealism and Aristotle in realism. Aristotle does not directly oppose Plato, but his ideas negate Plato's philosophy. As Plato says that the poets, they do not have any place to live in a state. They should be, it's very harsh or very strict. He is very strict against strict action is taking against the poets, that they should not be allowed to live in a state. But Aristotle, because he was student of Plato, in his book Poetics, he actually negates or opposes every idea of Plato, but he does not directly say it. Because there are two ways to say things. For example, if someone from you doesn't like my idea, you have two ways to explain your thoughts. One, you can directly say to me that I disagree with your idea by name, by pointing out me. The second is, without taking my name, without pointing finger at me, you can simply say that I believe this thing should happen in this way. So this is the second option was opted by Aristotle. So without criticizing directly to Plato's philosophy, he actually negates or actually opposes all the philosophy of Plato in his Poetics. Aristotle, again, we are talking about Aristotle versus Plato. Aristotle versus Plato doesn't mean that there is a boxing match between Aristotle and Plato. So it means the philosophy, the contradiction of philosophies between Aristotle and Plato. So Aristotle believes in change that occurs in humans. He declares change as fundamental process of nature. As we are, if you just think for a moment, just 5 years ago, your thoughts and your ideas, must be having you must be having some different ideas. But after 5 years, your ideas, if not changed 100%, but about 70%, they are changed. Then you pass 5 years of your life, then again your ideas will change. So change is actually naturally built in humans, and it is also said in philosophy that man or human, they get tired of unanimous things, like if same things they are happening again and again. For example, nowadays, this is the best example to explain this point. Nowadays, this COVID-19 coronavirus, it has actually destroyed world economy, and it has actually put us all under house arrest. So living all the time in the house, having no time to go out or enjoy our lives as we used to, going out with friends and enjoying in the university all around, we do not have that much liberty now, we do not have that much freedom now. And why? Because we want to secure our lives. So this is something that a constant process of house arrest is actually a cause of mental torture to us. All of us, we are tired of living in the homes, and if we live in 1 year in the home, it is just like we are living in a jail, we are prisoners. So we will try to go out. That is change is, we cannot be static. Man cannot be static at one point. He had to change his ideas, he had to change his position according to the situation. That is the reality. But if somebody says that man, when he was 10, he was 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, he remains the same, then he is living in idealism, he is follower of idealism. So change is a fundamental process. Then Aristotle praises poetry and Plato blames poetry, as we discussed earlier, that Plato says that poets, they should be banished means to kick off from the state, so they should be kicked out of the state. But Aristotle says that no, they should not be kicked out. They must be given a due place, because they are philosophers too. They have a place, they have a role to play in a society. But Plato says that they do not have any role to play. Then Aristotle says poetry and literature, both are very useful for the people and beneficial also, because lot of philosophy, lot of thoughts, lot of moral lesson and other things we get from poetry and literature. uh, but literature and poetry, they are useless for Plato. Plato says that this literature, this philosophy, this poetry, they have nothing to do in the governance system or in an ideal state or in the state affairs. So he both Aristotle is giving due place to poets, to the writers, to the dramatists in a society, but Plato says that this literary people, poetics, poets, they should not be allowed even to live in the state because they only they do much harm and they are less beneficial. Now coming to the topic, the poetics. The previous, as I have discussed in this lecture, as I am discussing, all is included in our literary criticism. That Plato also, because discussing Aristotle's Poetics without making a comparison with Plato's Idealism or Plato's Republic, it's just useless. So now the book written by Aristotle, the name of the book or treatise, it was the Poetics. Let's talk about the Poetics. Poetics was written by Aristotle with only a part of it survived. So it is said that probably if it had almost, you can say, for example, if the book had 300 pages, 200 pages have been wasted and only 100 pages survived. As I already told you, we are talking about 2400 years ago. So it consists of almost 26 chapters. In most of the times whenever you check it, they say it is divided into 5 chapters. So 5, when they say it is the book Poetics consists of 5 chapters, it means that 5 different ideas presented by Aristotle. The chapters of the book, they are actually divided into 5 portions, but actually it consists of 26 chapters. It is a first book of literary criticism. John Dryden and Samuel Johnson, that we will discuss Samuel Johnson preface to Shakespeare in our next lecture, because this also included in literary criticism. So they say that Aristotle is father of literary criticism because Poetics is considered as first authentic work on criticism, literary criticism. Before that, literature and all these things, they were not taken as seriously, or criticism was not a subject of having worth in a society or having worth in Greek or other areas of the world. Particularly we are talking about Greek. So it's the first work where uh, that is why Aristotle is known as father of criticism, father of literary criticism. Now let me tell you one thing here. Criticism here doesn't mean to criticize someone. Criticism here means to judge, to evaluate. To judge, to evaluate, not to the people, but to the literary work. I mean, a poetry, a novel, or a drama, or anything, when it is critically analyzed, that what are the good points and what are the weak points. When they are discussed, you can say, discussed with without any biasness or without being biased, that is actually literary criticism. Aristotle discusses poetry and drama. You can divide his, he discusses about poetry and then he comes to drama, the tragedy. But most his, whatever he given the points in this book, that is all about tragedy. Because comedy, he talks less about comedy because comedy was not taken as seriously. The reason is that even nowadays, if you watch any comic drama or any comedy, you don't get any proper moral lessons, or you don't have, you just go there, watch the drama, you are laughing and coming back. And when you talk about tragedy, it has lot of impact and lot of moral lessons, lot of real lessons of life, they are learned from a tragic drama or tragic any tragic story. So comedy is rarely discussed in Poetics. Comedy is just, you can say that it is actually not discussed in Poetics, about 1% or 2%, just to just namely it has been discussed in the Poetics. So as I discussed in this lecture, we will talk about poetry discussed by Aristotle in his book Poetics, and in next lecture we will be discussing about his drama and tragedy. So poetry, he says that poetry is actually imitation, mimesis. This word he has used, mimesis. Mimesis means imitation, and imitation means to follow, to copy or to follow. And he, when he discusses about poetry, he discusses about epic, long narrative poem, tragic poem, and comedies in poetic forms. Poetry comes from two causes that exist in human nature deeply. S- Aristotle says that poetry is not somewhat that is being, just it's not a collection of words. It is something. It has two reasons, and those reasons they are deeply rooted in human nature. So poetry is actually a reflection of human nature. One is instinct of imitation, and the second is instinct of harmony and rhythm. Imitation to copy, as I told you, and instinct means something that is genetically present, something that we already know about it, something that is moving from generation to generation. So instinct of harmony and rhythm. First you say imitation, copy, and then harmony and rhythm. Harmony, you can say, there is harmony of ideas, like once I gave an example, I forgot that example. It was okay, if I remember, I'll, while recording I cannot stop it. If I get in mind, I'll explain it uh, further. Instinct of imitation and instinct of harmony and rhythm. Copying to follow. Follow what? To follow what that is already present, that is genetically present. And instinct, and making it in a rhythm and a harmony, as we have singing the last words, and harmony, that there is a harmony of ideas. So the function of the poet is to describe what can or may happen. That is more important for the poetry, though. This way you can understand this instinct of imitation and instinct of harmony and rhythm. Function of the poet is, according to Plato. Plato says poets are just like historians, like they describe what had already happened. But Aristotle says that the purpose of poet, or the aim of the poet, must not to describe what has already happened, but he should do something, a probability, that what can happen, what may happen in future, or what is the possibility. Uh, like if an incident had taken place 100 years ago, that will be described by various historians in different ways. But when he comes to the poet and he declares poet a philosopher, he will not discuss only the incident, he will discuss that something, that what is the more possibility, what has not actually happened, and he doesn't know that it will happen or not, but he describes something more than that, more than that, not only what has actually happened, but what may happen, or what can, uh, what can happen, or what is the possibility. Like sometimes when we are in the class, we discuss any drama or poetry, like Shakespeare's Hamlet, or we read his sonnets, that is already written and we describe it. But and there the ideas or the moral lessons or the themes given, that we extract from Shakespeare's writing or any other writer's writing. But the writer, when he describes, when we are discussing in the class, sometimes we believe that there are other possibilities too, there are other possibilities too. When we talk about the other possibilities that have not been described by the writer, then we talk, that is actually the purpose of the poet, the purpose of the aim of the philosopher, that should be to describe something that can happen in future. So qualifications of a poet, that if somebody is a poet, what characteristics, what qualities, what merits the poet should have. First of all, having the power of imagination to create characters and incidents, same as that of a drama. I mean, when you are writing, you watch many dramas nowadays on TV, you watch movies. Uh, mm, what they write is the stories that are described. They are sometimes we, whenever we start watching a movie or a drama, they say that this drama or story is based on it is a true story. So whatever is discussed in the drama, that can be 70% true, 60% true, 40% are the thoughts of the writer. So every writer is actually, he takes, he uses his imaginations, his characters, he makes characters, and he makes incidents, he make plot of the drama or any movie or any poetry. Well, here we are discussing about poetry. So one thing I must tell you, that poetry doesn't mean to describe something imaginary. Poetry, sorry, to describe something that is in our imaginations. Poetry, there can be a story that can be described in poetry also. In our, in Pakistan, in our Urdu poetry, most of the time, whatever I mean we discuss, we hardly find any poet who has described stories in his poetry. But when we talk about epics, long poems, in English literature and other literatures of the world, other in other languages, there are stories described in poetry. So poetry is also used to describe stories. Here story means to, so the poet must have the power of imagination to create his own characters, to create his own instance, and he should be a divine madman. Like divine madman means again the power of imaginations, the one who talks about the possibilities that rarely happen or that rarely occur. Then again, he must not speak in his own voice, but the mimetic quality. So the poet, whatever he's describing, whatever he likes or dislikes, that is something else, but he should consider everything. Like I mean, it's quite simple to understand. If a poet is writing something, he should keep in view the keep in mind what his readers expect. So if whatever poet want to tell a philosophy, if poet started telling you a strange or a awkward philosophy, definitely the readers, they would reject it. So he should, instead of speaking his own voice, he should focus on the philosophy or on the mimetic quality. And the most important thing about a poet, it should be that he should understand human nature. That is quite, I mean, common. It's not very philosophical, that if a person who doesn't understand human nature, how can he be a good writer? He's writing a drama, he's writing a movie, he's writing a poetry, he's writing everything, but he doesn't care about the audience, that what audience can accept or reject. If he has some understanding of the audience mind, then he has understanding of human nature. And some human nature here doesn't mean only knowing about the humans, but because when we talk about human nature, the dramas or the movies or the poetry that are nowadays widely read by people, if you talk about 2000 years ago, they must not, they, if such type of poetry must have been, might be rejected at that time. It might have been rejected. So it changes. Understanding of human nature according to the specific times, according to the time or according to the era, that what kind of mentality of the people, what kind of you know acceptance of the readers uh, is there. So poet must understand human nature. He must not use his own, speak in his own voice. He should have power of strong powers of imaginations to create such a power that he can create his own characters. Creation of characters means, when you are writing a drama, you give name to your character, you make a story, or writing a poetry, you make a plot, complete plot. And divine madman, again it means imaginations. So while discussing poetry, Aristotle talks about the theory of genres. Genre means the types. So what can be, how poetry should be developed. There are three main parts of genres, three genres. First, media. Second, objects. Third, mode. These are the three things that are quite essential for a poet to keep in mind before writing anything. So media means medium. Some medium means language. Language is used in literature, poetry. To describe your thoughts in poetry or in other forms of literature, you use language. That is media of literature. As I have written here, colors. So COLORS colors, it's in American English, and COLOURS colors is in British English. So both are correct, but because we are following in Pakistan, we are following British English, so it should be COLOURS. So I hope, I mean, when there was correction of spellings, it is COLORS. So do not think that it is incorrect. It is actually correct, but according to American, according to British, it should be COLOURS. So why these colors have been mentioned? What the use of color in media? When we talk about painting, when we talk about painting, the painter describe his thoughts with colors. So for a painter, the media of imitation, or the medium of imitation, is colors, and for a poet it is language. And language should be a high profile language. Poets, they must not use an ordinary language. It should be much higher than that. That should must appeal the reader, or that must, uh, create a sense of sense that should create a sense of happiness in the reader, or sense a kind of attraction in the reader's mind. If it is not, then it's useless. Then again, we talk about objects. As I have already discussed, that in poetry the objects of imitation are men in action, higher or lower, good or bad, whatever they are. If they are higher, the poet should describe them much higher. If they are lower, they should be described as, so higher and lower here means good or bad. If they are good, they should be described in a more in a highly good manners, and if they are bad, they should be described as really bad. And mode, all the characteristics are living and moving before the audience. So how the characters and, you know uh, they live and move before us, like as you are listening this lecture and watching this on these lines on your mobile or laptop screens, your mind is also moving with that. If your mind is moving with the audio with these words spoken by, I mean, by the speaker, as the speaker is, I am the speaker right now, and you are moving along with the voice, you are moving along with the ideas and the philosophies. If the readers, they are so much, deeply affected by the writing of any writer, of any poet, they start moving along with the subjects, so it means that you are deeply attached with it. Once you can take an example that sometimes you are watching a movie and you like the movie so much, any movie, whatever you like, Pakistani or any Hollywood movie. So whenever you are watching it, you are, you're just moving along with the characters for 1 hour, for 1 hour and 30 minutes, the duration of the movie. You forget about everything. You forget about even your own thoughts. So this is the power of the writers, power of the words, power of the pictures that are moving along in front of you. That your mind starts moving along with the characters. So actually you become part of the characters while watching it. So this is the power of a poet. So this is the power of a writer, a philosopher, that he actually attracts, or he actually takes his audience, he moves his audience along with him. So there is, in mode, we have narrative and dramatic. Narrative means described in a language, and dramatic means described in language and performed, also performed on stage, or performed on, nowadays we have TV and all that. So in mood there can be two modes, one narrative mode and the other is dramatic mode for a poet. In dramatic there is a performance and language, in narrative there is only language. So the last one is the questions of it. Describe in detail the theory of genres presented by Aristotle in the Poetics, that I have explained already. The second is explain the difference between a poet and a historian according to Aristotle. So what Aristotle actually tells us, the difference about difference between poet and a historian, you have to describe it and make a comparison of Plato and Aristotle's philosophy. So I give a hint about it, that Plato follows idealism and Aristotle follows realism. In this lecture I have discussed the philosophy of Plato and Aristotle. I started discussing about poetics. The first part of the poetics I have discussed, that is about poetry. The second one is more important. So stress is on tragedy. Now we'll be discussing the drama and tragedy. You might be, all of you, in your classical drama course, you might have started studying this Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. So for Aristotle also describes this, in the way as Oedipus Rex was written. So we will be discussing in our next lecture about tragedy and the parts of tragedy, elements of tragedy, essential elements of tragedy described by Aristotle.